As promised last week, subhanallah. If you ask your children at school, what is the date? I would think any child after grade 1 would probably be able to tell you at least the month and the year. But last week, we began a new Islamic year. And I asked you, if you ask that same child, what Islamic year is it? Would they be able to respond as quickly as they responded to 2013? The Islamic year marks not the birth of somebody, but marks an amazing event. An event that happened that changed history. The Prophet ﷺ was happy to live in Medina and Mecca. And the proof of this, that the beginning of the Islamic year is this amazing event of the Hijra of the Prophet ﷺ. The immigration of the Prophet from Mecca to Medina. And the Prophet ﷺ did not do this because he liked Medina more than Mecca. He didn't do that because there were more financial opportunities for him in Medina. He didn't do it because the weather in Medina was better. He didn't do it because he had relatives in Medina. When the Prophet ﷺ left Mecca, he stood on the outskirts of Mecca and he said some famous words. He said that Allah is my witness, that I love this city, I love you, and I know Allah loves this city. And except that the people of this city have kicked me out of this city, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that I would never have left this city. So the immigration of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was very difficult. And it wasn't difficult for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself only, but it was difficult for all those people that were following the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It meant a major, not just a shift in their businesses or a shift in the food that they would eat or the climate that they would live in, or a shift for their children. It was a major shift in their lives, because a lot of the people that left Mecca, they left on the run. Forcefully they were left. They left forcefully. So they left their belongings behind. They left their businesses behind. Some were separated from their families. Some they left with their families. There is an example of a Sahabi that when he left Mecca, the family grabbed him. And they said, "You're not leaving with your wife. Your wife is part of our family. If you want to leave, you can leave." They took his wife's family took his wife. But his family let him go, but said he has children, that we want the children. So imagine, one family, the husband goes for Hijrah, the wife goes back to Mecca by herself, and the children are taken from her by her in-laws. Imagine that separation. And it wasn't for a week or a month, or it was for months, some say a year. This separation. And they separated for what reason? Why did they do Hijrah? They did so for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They did so to practice Islam without fear of oppression. Without fear of oppression. In Mecca, subhanAllah, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he had a courtyard in the front of his house. And he used to read Quran in that courtyard. And when Sayyidina Abu Bakr read Quran, he would cry. So when he would start to pray, the people in the neighborhood, the children in the neighborhood specifically, would come and watch him. And when he would cry, they would listen to his reading of Quran and they would get affected. So the people of the neighborhood got together and they said, we understand you're an important part of the neighborhood. We understand your clan. We understand your family. We understand your position with your businesses and everything. We understand that you're a friend of the Prophet of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we understand that you're following your friend's religion. But we ask you, can you pray inside your house? Just don't pray outside. Just pray inside. We don't want you praying outside. Now this is somebody that was of the most influential people in Mecca. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the people that accepted Islam, unfortunately, not fortunately, subhanAllah, but those that accepted Islam in the very beginning were the weak, which is the sunnah of all the prophets that came from Adam alayhi salam up to Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Those that accepted the message were always the simple. So also in Mecca, the people that accepted the message of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam were the simple. Those that didn't have a very big family or very influential family. So they had no one to defend them. So they were oppressed and beaten and tormented. So the Prophet ﷺ, when he immigrated to Medina, he showed us the importance of this immigration, but he also showed us the priorities of Islam. When Sayyidina Muhammad ﷺ entered into Medina, before he immigrated, he sent the Sahaba to do groundwork, to teach Quran. And one person, Abdullah ibn Salam, he saw the Prophet ﷺ enter into Medina. And of course they were singing the very famous song, Tawam Badr Alayna, that the full moon has risen upon us, when they called the Prophet ﷺ when he came from the desert. And it's a very famous song, you know, very, not a song, but a nasheed. Nasheed. What is it in English? A hymn. A kind of a hymn, yes. Not a song, but anyway. So it's very, very beautiful. Children should know it. I'm sure they probably do. Yeah, in time. So look what happened when Abdullah ibn Salam saw the Prophet coming to Medina. That was the first time he saw him. He said, immediately when I saw him, the first thing from the words of the Prophet, the first thing I heard from the Prophet, listen to this hadith. You think about it, the Prophet's come to a new place to establish the religion of Allah, to settle a massive dispute between the Aus and the Khazraj. So look at this. So the Prophet ﷺ says, O people, he said, O people, not O Muslims. He said what? O people. Look at this. Ifshu salam. Spread peace. Spread peace. Give food. Share your food. Connect with your family members. Connect with your family members. Because you've got a feud here, right? In Medina, at the time of the Prophet's immigration, there was a massive feud. They were killing each other. And pray while the people are asleep. 4 things, simple things. Spread peace with your hands and with your tongue. Give food. Share your food. Connect with your family members. And pray while the people are asleep. And what will be the result? تدخل الجنة بالسلام, and you will enter paradise with peace. That's the hadaf. That's the goal. The goal at the end is to enter paradise. Those 4 things. This is the first thing they heard from the Prophet. They didn't hear, this is haram and this is halal and this and you do this and you go to Jahannam. The Prophet ﷺ didn't do that. He came to Medina, this is the first words he said. Imagine, what did the Prophet ﷺ do after that? What did the Prophet ﷺ establish in Medina? He established connections with those that were coming, the Muhajirin and the Ansar. He connected them. Right? Somebody coming from Mecca, somebody from Medina, they put them together. You're helping each other. Right? He then connected services and huquq and the rights of Muslims, the rights of business, the rights of... And then the Prophet ﷺ encouraged knowledge and learning. And from this learning came the ulama. Ibn Malik, Imam Shafi'i, Abu Hanifa, just to name a few. Abdullah ibn Hanbal. So you see, A'imma, rahimahullah. Ahmad ibn Hanbal. And then from that, not just from dunya, not just in deen and fiqh, not just in Quran, but from those came the ulama of dunya. Ibn Sina of medicine, and then in physics and chemistry, and Ibn Battuta in geography, and in physics and mathematics, and chemistry, and research, and philosophy, and literature. And a lot of it, the Muslims were endowed. They were the original authors. But a lot of it, they took the literature that was in existence from the Greek and from the cultures before, and then they progressed those ideas because they translated those literatures into Arabic. And then Arabic became the language of literature, the language of knowledge. And all of those literatures after that, the Arabic literature was then translated into all the other languages. That was from Medina. That was from Medina. What began that was a hijrah. It was an immigration for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And from Medina, the Prophet ﷺ established huquq lin-nisa. He established the rights for women, where women had no rights at all. Not just in the Arab world, nowhere in the world where women had rights. Women had no rights to own property anywhere in the world. Only until the 18th century, in the West, women were allowed to own property and go to university, Allahu Akbar, in the 19th century, not in the 18th century. Where 1,435 years ago, women had the right to own property, to inherit, to learn, to practice, and not just to practice their knowledge, but it was wajib. It was compulsory that women to practice those essential professions like medicine and teaching. All of these were established where? In Medina. By whom? By the Prophet ﷺ, with the order of me, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we look at the hijrah of the year, we don't just look at it as an alternative, it's just another date. No. The event that began the Islamic New Year was major. The lessons that we can take from it are major lessons. Not just in the immigration and what happened after, but the way in which the Prophet ﷺ immigrated. It's too long, I've already taken too much time of this week's khutbah to talk about the way in which the Prophet ﷺ immigrated. And these are lessons that we should understand. The Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, generally, they sacrificed everything for the establishment of deen. So we could be Muslim. So we could be Muslim. And that was the beginning. And that's why it's so appropriate at this time. We should remember. We should remember those sacrifices. We should look into our own lives and make sure our children understand the significance of the Islamic New Year. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to revive these qualities of respect and knowledge, both of deen and of dunya, to understand the huquq of al-ibad, to understand the rights and regulations of your neighbors, of your family members, of the people you work with, that we should understand their rights, the people we work for, the people that we work for, we should understand their rights. And of course, we cannot forget, as we talked about a few weeks ago, that the Prophet ﷺ reminded us in the khutbah al-wada' of the nisa, of ladies, and their rights. So we should be very, very wary of these dates, of this date. I'm not talking about our celebration and this and that, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that we should remember the events. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remind us, inshallah ta'ala, of the value of Islam in our lives, our daily lives. And that our children understand the values of this as well. And this week's khutbah, inshallah ta'ala, very, very quickly. 2 minutes summary. It's just about leadership, inshallah ta'ala, and we should give shukr that we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we have very, very strong leadership and secure leadership, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is wajib, that we give shukr that inshallah through this leadership that we have established justice system, inshallah ta'ala, in a very, very stable environment, that we can bring our children up, inshallah ta'ala, and we can practice our deen. We can come to the masjid without any fear, and we can practice deen in our daily lives. May Allah give us tawfiq, inshallah ta'ala, to practice, inshallah, what we hear. We, inshallah ta'ala, make dua, inshallah. The translation continues, inshallah, at a more consistent level, inshallah ta'ala. Barakallahu.